Tourism and Cultural Affairs. Now, and then Samara Phelps is the Executive Director of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. Technically, this is an office of county administration, yet I've asked them to present their budget as a standalone department because their funds are totally separate and there are no general funds. But with that, Samara, please go ahead.
I think I picked a mic that wasn't on. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Samara Phelps. I'm the Director of Tourism, as Gary mentioned, and I'm here to present the proposed budget as approved by the Tourism Development Council. The budget slides are found at tab 25 and the fund summary on page 5, which is the first thing I'll reference. The tourism program is funded by the county transient room tax and receives no general fund. The budget for fiscal year 22-23 is $12,074,933. This is divided among 4 program areas that work to support Clackamas County's vibrant economy goals. We are currently staffed at 7.5 positions and will add 2 FTE in the coming fiscal year. Fiscal year 22-23 is an 86% increase in our budget and a 27% increase in staff. If you look at that, that's basically a reflection of tourism's ongoing recovery from the pandemic impacts. And so I'd like you to look at the summary and revenues and expenses found on page 7, which helps detail where some of this growth is coming from. So in the summary of revenues and expenses, the proposed revenue includes 3 sources that result in this 86% increase in our budget. The first is carryover from revenue above the forecast for the last 2 fiscal years. In March of 2020, when the pandemic shut down travel and transient room tax revenue all but ceased for a period of time, our program was cut to the bare minimum. Then revenue has exceeded projections in 2021 and current fiscal year, resulting in this substantial carryover that you see reflected in this 22-23 budget. Second is that transient room tax revenue is forecasted in this coming year to return to pre-pandemic levels for the first time since the pandemic struck. And third, the tourism department has received revenue loss replenishment from the county that will be programmed in the coming fiscal year. So those are one-time funds that were received this year, programmed into next year. The carryover from the last 2 years has been used to establish contingency. So you'll see our contingency at the bottom of that page. And at 1 year, we've established that contingency to reflect an estimate of transient room tax collections for a single year. And that results in our program being able to spend based on funds actually received instead of on forecasts, which is how we'd been previously structured. This increases our resiliency from future disruptions to our sole revenue, which is the transient room tax fund. So to ensure that our program budget remains sustainable beyond these extreme carryovers that you see and the lost revenue replenishment that we've received, we are programming all of our staffing and ongoing program elements to be sustainable with the transient room tax collections. As the budget reflects, tourism's program is recovering as a more resilient and responsive program, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this proposed budget.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Commissioner Smith? At 9.5 FTE, are you able to deliver the services that you did pre-pandemic, or have you reorganized the tourism department in different business areas that we may not be aware of?
Yeah, great question. So we are able to implement programs as you've seen in the past. What we have done is we are addressing that capacity in a couple of different ways. One is returning the staff. So we have staff to be able to implement these programs. And we also have been returning capacity through contracted services and professional expertise. And so what that's allowing us to do is to be able to essentially outsource for the technical skills that we need instead of paying a county employee to do some of those technical. So it's a little bit different organization to how we approach staffing pre-pandemic, but we're still able to deliver the capacity and the programming that the county expects out of their transient room tax.
So have you changed your programming now compared to pre-pandemic, just based on changes in I'm sure that the travel industry has gone through a lot of ups and downs, and maybe what people enjoyed pre-pandemic, they're not doing now. Have you been able to identify cultural changes?
Yes, so we are definitely looking to everything that we bring back to be responsive to the current environment, not the past environment. And it's been a wild ride. No 2 months, as most of your work probably reflects as well, have been the same. So to say we've identified trends, I don't feel confident in saying that yet, but I can tell you that we are evaluating each decision based on what our projections are for future need, not a look back at what it was before the pandemic.
So in your budget presented on tab 25.5, in your leadership and administration is $8 million. Is that where the contracted services come from?
Correct. That's where the contracted services come from, and that is also where we have housed these one-time projects and strategic investments that we're looking to use the one-time funds of carryover and the revenue replenishment. So that line is larger than you would typically see,
Right.
but it's to ensure that our programs that are ongoing don't have kind of a default built-in expectation that those revenues could look the same in the next year. We're looking to bring those out as projects for specific scopes instead
So
of
your
embedding them in the
contracted
program.
services- Your contracted services, are they limited duration?
Our contracted services are all procured through the county's procurement and finance processes, and essentially, yes, they are limited duration in that way that we have learned through this process that we need the flexibility to make changes in a relatively quick fashion going forward.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm glad to see that revenues are returning to your tourism department.
Thank you.
Mr. Cernach.
How many FTEs did you have prior to the pandemic?
We had 15 FTE, and that was 17 individuals, but it was 15 FTE.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, hey, Samara, I want to apologize in advance because I think that you talked about this and I just didn't go in my brain as fast as you were saying it.
Sure, happy
'Cause
to revisit anything.
Because, yeah. So I'm still caught on when this commission approved the lost revenue for ARPA.
Correct.
I recall it was like 2.7 or 3 million.
It's 2.1.
Okay, 2.1, thank you. So I'm looking here from 1920, the revenue was 4.3, and 221 amended was 6.5 million. I'm just curious, where was the lost revenue?
So the lost revenue is based on the calculations from the lost revenue calculator that we all use to figure those things out. And where that is it is the lost revenue is between the 1920 and the 2021. But because we had those reductions, we kind of insulated some of that as we came through with those carryovers, if that helps reflect that. So it's lost revenue from transient room tax collection specifically. And then in 2021, we not only have carryover beyond what we forecasted by making the changes we made to our organization, we also have one-time revenues that we were able to secure through grants and other program funds during the 2021 and 21-22 revenues that were not related to transient room tax revenue.
Okay. So it's been a concern of mine that when the board approved it was like $13 million in lost revenue, there were two areas of the budget that I saw concern with. One was this, because obviously we cut our staff immensely from how many to 2?
15 FTE.
To 2. So we didn't have those expenses. And similarly, I made the question at NCPRD because we quit basically operations of the parks and that, and we did not have the revenue from all the fees and everything. But it's very confusing looking at this. I mean, just from the public looking at this budget, it's like, okay, in 1920, there was a revenue of 4.3, and wait, now there's going to be revenue of $12 million. It's like, how does that happen? And we all know that I was the naysayer on voting for the just giving over the lost revenue without more detail, so that's it. I was the lone voice in that. But I bring this up because this is hard to, it's really impossible to see what happened here.
Yeah, which is why I chose to focus the presentation time to walk through those different elements of where we're basically getting caught up on some of those revenues, because it does bury the lead of the story of the harm that was that last quarter of 2020 and the uncertainty of 2021 as a whole.
Yeah, I just recall when I was a new commissioner, it was just under 5 million that tourism had, and now looking at it being 12 million, it's a lot. So it is a concern to me that we did allocate 2 million of ARPA for this, because we have expenses and costs. So I'll just state it there. I think my commission knows where my concerns have been because I've stated them, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Commissioner Shull?
Yes, Samara. Could you go to tab 25-7,
Yes.
materials and services across, change from prior year. This 22, 23, looking at 5.7 million, increase of 4 million. Did you go over that earlier, or did I miss it?
I didn't go into detail, and I'm happy to do it again.
Okay, that 4 million is going to be for what?
Yeah, so that 4 million is increased capacity that we were just discussing with Commissioner Smith around the kind of shift in our programming that we use professional services
Okay.
as opposed to personnel services in hired staff for some of those, as well as that is where our expenses are expected
Okay.
related to the lost revenue
And you're going to pay for
replenishment.
that out of your existing fund balance?
Correct.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions. I appreciate it. It's very, very good to hear that you guys are getting back up to full steam. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for tourism. It was one of my things in the chamber, so doing a good job getting the
Thank
word
you.
out there again. Even though we didn't all burn down, right? We're all still here.